let's talk about 10 questions you probably won't be asked at recurrent training, and why not. Many of these questions are not suitable for the multiple choice quiz you get at recurrent. You might get some of them during an oral exam for the type rating, as the answers are better suited for a longer discussion. Welcome to another real-world SF50 flying video. This one is titled 10 Questions You Might Not Get at Recurrent Ground School. Hello, I'm David Weeks. I've been flying professionally for over 50 years, starting as a CFI, then as a charter pilot in light twins. I spent time as an air ambulance pilot and Swearingen Metro, and worked as a demonstration pilot for the Learjet factory. I had a 35-year airline career flying the 737-200 and 300, the A320 series, and I retired as a Boeing 787 captain. I'm also current CFII. I've got over 675 hours in the SF50, and I'd like to share some of my SF50 experiences with you. Now, there may be other YouTube channels that have glitzier production values than this one. I like to spend my time writing and teaching about the SF50 and not doing post-production work. So just imagine that this video is like a hangar chat session between friends. Also, let me be clear that this video is not flight instruction. The Cirrus SF50 Airplane Flight Manual is always controlling. Okay, let's jump into it. Question 1. What kind of message, caution, or warning do you get if the main entry door is not fully latched and becomes open with the engine running or in flight? Is there any oral warning? If the main entry door or also the baggage door is sensed open when the engine is running, you will get a red CAS message. But you do not get any oral warning. So if this happens on the takeoff roll at a higher speed and you are looking outside, you may very well not see the CAS warning. I think it sure would be nice if there was an oral warning. Question 2. How can you tell the engine is producing the correct power when at TOGA? Now, we know that when the white triangle that represents engine thrust is pointing at the cyan takeoff power T-bug, the engine is developing full thrust. But one question I've always had is how can we tell that the T-bug is actually at the correct spot for full thrust? As far as I know, the SF50 Williams engine, unlike some other jet aircraft, has no charts or tables that would allow us to check if the displayed N1 is correct when the pointer is at the T. Question 3. Is an RVSM, that is reduced vertical separation minimums, letter of authority, required to fly above flight level 280? And what about outside the U.S.? While an RVSM letter of authority used to be required for all RVSM operations, that changed in January of 2019 when the FAA issued Advisory Circular 91-85B. Nowadays, you do not need an RVSM LOA if you meet the requirements spelled out in Part 91, Appendix G. Here are the essentials. 1. Your aircraft is fitted for ADS-B out and is transmitting sufficient ADS-B data. 2. Your ADS-B out system is compliant with FAR 91.227. 3. Your aircraft is maintained in accordance with all the mandatory maintenance tasks such as air data and transponder checks and is meeting height monitoring specification. 4. Crews are trained in RVSM ops. 5. The crew has no other need for a specific document confirming they are RVSM authorized. And 6. You do not operate above flight level 280 outside of the contiguous United States. This last condition is important. You have to be in the lower 48 states. If you want to fly in RVSM airspace in Canada, Mexico, Alaska, or anywhere else, you must have an RVSM letter of authority. And lastly, there is what I think is a typographical error in the current version of the SF50 Airplane Flight Manual. On page 2-28, we can read, quote, autopilot must be on above flight level 290, quote. The word above is incorrect. The advisory circular I referred to earlier, AC 91-85B, defines RVS airspace this way. RVSM airspace is any airspace or route between flight level 290 and flight level 410 inclusive, where aircraft are separated vertically by 1,000 feet. So flight level 290 is in RVSM airspace, and the autopilot must be on in normal cruise flight, as detailed in the advisory circular. 4. Is having a minimum equipment list LOA required to operate your SF50? Why or why not? And what if you don't? Okay, you do not have to have a minimum equipment list or MEL to operate your SF50, but it sure can be a maintenance hassle if you don't. Let's look at FAR 91.213. 91.213, inoperative instruments and equipment. A, except as provided in paragraph D of this section, no person may take off an aircraft with inoperative instruments or equipment installed unless the following conditions are met. 1. An approved minimum equipment list exists for that aircraft. Now, the reg goes on, but the essential point is that unless you have an approval for an MEL for the SF50, everything installed on the aircraft has to be working to operate it. You got a passenger convenience light in op, no MEL? Hey, sorry, buddy, you're grounded until it is repaired and signed off. If you do have MEL approval, log the squawk in the aircraft maintenance logbook, look up the passenger convenience light in the MEL, and comply with all the MEL requirements for deferring maintenance action. Now, I'm not going to delve into all the details of getting approval, but it is not hard to get MEL approval, and it's not hard to use the MEL in day-to-day flying. Question 5. What are 3 ways to change the destination airport in the G3000? Okay, 1. On the flight plan page, tap the already entered destination and choose Delete from the destination options. Then enter the new destination. Okay, B, another way. On the flight plan page, tap the already entered destination in the flight plan, then destination options. Delete it, then re-enter or change the destination. And one last option is on the GTC1 home screen, tap PROS for procedure. Then you can enter a new destination and approach using the airport button at the upper right of the window. Question 6. Does fuel burn in flight move the CG forward or aft? Fuel burn-off moves the center of gravity further forward, which is a good thing. Now, be aware that adding TKS fluid moves the CG aft as the tank is aft of the wing. It's adjacent to the baggage compartment on the right side. Now, I need to be very aware of my center of gravity when flying solo. I weigh 150 pounds with my flight bag. With the 2 middle seats and console installed and a full tank of TKS and my 20-pound flyaway kit in the baggage compartment, I can only carry 260 gallons of gas, or else the CG is too far aft. If I want to go out with full tanks, I need to strap the 20-pound flyaway kit into the right front seat. Now, if I'm doing a pilots and pause dogflight and have removed all the seats and the center console, the empty CG is even further aft. With the 20-pound flyaway kit in the right front seat, I'm just barely out of aft CG with full tanks, and I need another 5 pounds in the right front seat, and that'll bring the CG to the aft limit. So be sure to know where your center of gravity is when flying solo or with no seats installed. Question 7. You land with 63 gallons of fuel and want to fuel up to 287 gallons. The fuel truck has only one hose. So what are you going to tell the fueler? Now, everyone is aware, or should be aware, of the recommended 75-gallon maximum imbalance between the wing tanks when refueling. Obviously, this is only an issue when only one hose is available for refueling and the fuel upload is more than 150 gallons, as in no more than 75 gallons added to each wing. But our math, our example makes the math a bit more challenging, especially if you do it in public when the fueler is ready to go. Naturally, the fueler wants to do as few back and forths between wings as possible. So let's figure this out. 287 minus 63 equals 224 gallons to be added. Half of 224 is 112, and make a mental note of that amount. Now let's start with the right wing tank. Add 75 gallons to the right wing. Adding more now would exceed the recommended max imbalance. Then add 112 gallons to the left wing. This does not exceed the imbalance, as we just put 75 gallons in the other wing. And also, it is the desired half of the total into the left wing. Now, go back to the right wing and add 37 gallons. Since we previously added 75, this now brings the total added in this wing to 112, which is half of the desired 224, and also what we added to the left wing. And voila, fueling is accomplished. Or, if you use Bob Urschel's Vision ProFlight Performance and Weight and Balance Calculation app, it can do the calculations for you and eliminates any chance of a public math error. Question 8. Before starting the engine, both batteries are on and you do not see the engine start volts message. But the plane's been sitting for quite a while. First, what triggers that CAS message? And then the emergency bus display says 26.0 volts. Does this mean it's okay to start the engine? Is there any way to check the battery 1 voltage? And if yes, how do you do it? All right, now Cirrus says it's okay to start the engine if the engine start volts CAS message is not present. It appears when the battery 1 voltage is below 25.5 volts. Now we do know the voltage will drop when the starter engages, but Cirrus is saying that 25.5 is enough to commence engine start. Now, a common mistake is to confuse the emer bus voltage with the BAT1 voltage. With the engine not running, the emergency bus volt readout shows the battery 2 voltage as its battery 2 that powers the emergency bus. And this has nothing to do with BAT1, which powers the starter. The only way to see the BAT1 voltage directly is to bring up the electrical synoptic page on the MFD. Question 9. After starter cutout at 50% in 1, the ITT peaks but does not decrease. So, do you have a good start or not? Now, the following is my personal opinion and nobody else's. In my personal opinion, neither the pilot's information manual nor the airplane flight manual have a good detailed description of the normal engine start. You know, the ITT can vary hotter and colder a little bit during the start process, but in my 40 plus years of operating jet engines, I can say that seeing a rollback or significant decrease in ITT or AGT always happens at the end of a normal start. In an SF50, I always see a decrease in ITT just at or before the engine reaches ground to idle RPM of about 25%. For me, no rollback means the start was not normal. And if I don't see an ITT rollback, and even a small one would be acceptable, I'm going to shut down the engine, wait long enough to make sure that I don't exceed the starter duty cycle limitations, and restart the engine. If I still don't get a rollback, I'm calling Cirrus technical support. And again, this is my opinion and your mileage may vary. Here's a graph showing ITT and N1 on a recent engine start of mine. The engine was cold, and note the ITT peaked at 652 just as the engine settled into the N1 of 25% idle RPM. Here's question 10, and we will close with an easy one. You want to climb out at the flaps 50% best angle of climb speed. What is that speed, and is it okay to use the autopilot? Now, the AFM page 5-28 says that VX with toga power, gear up, and flaps 50% is 91 knots indicated. But when you look at the minimum autopilot speeds on Airplane Flight Manual page 2-28, we see that the minimum autopilot speed with flaps 50% is 95 knots indicated. So, since the flaps 50% VX speed is 91 knots, you have to hand fly in this configuration. Now, if you plan to fool the system, be aware that the little jet is smart enough to know when the flaps are 50%, and the auto throttle will not allow a setting speed below 95 knots. That's it for this episode of Real World SF50 Flying. I'm David Weeks, and thanks for watching.